Thank you very much, Professor Hasina Hasya, Mr. Mohammad Alam, the Secretary General of Institute Objective Studies, Professor Javid Khan, the editor for the book, Dato Iqbal Khan, Dr. Ahmadullah Siddiqi, Dr. Abdul Azim Islahi, Dr. Arshad Siddiqi, Dr. Aftad Alam, brothers and sisters, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. First, let me thank the IOS for inviting me to launch this very important book, a book that all of us are waiting for to learn and understand and to gain the knowledge about the contributions of the late Professor Nejatullah Siddiqi. And particularly, as we know, his major contributions are not only within the context of Islamic economics, but also in the context of ethics and governance, if I can say. Professor Nejatullah was born in 1931 in India, and today is known as a scholar, economist, and thought leader in Islamic economics and finance. One unique characteristic about the late Professor Nejatullah is his blend of traditional jurisprudence, Islamic knowledge, together with the modern economics education. So he has that unique foundation and not unique knowledge of being able to bridge both the traditional Islamic sciences with the modern economic sciences. So this is a very unique individuals who, I would say, goes beyond his time and looks at how we can utilize the Islamic economics, the Islamic principle in order to organize not only banking, but also how do we organize our country along Islamic economics, Islamic principles. I think this is one of the key things of his contribution. So if I can just read a few of his contribution, I divided into several categories. One is in the context of foundation works in Islamic economics. I think he developed the theoretical framework for Islamic economics, and he's one of the pioneers in developing this framework for Islamic economics. I remember as a young student back then in the 80s, we were studying about Islamic economics, and we were using his book in order to understand how we organize the economic system in the country based on the Islamic principles. And his book, of course, is one of the key readings that we use in order for us to understand, not only in the context that we use to discuss in International Islamic University, but also among the study groups, students who are studying among themselves, discussing how we can organize the country's economic system based on his ideas. So one is the foundation work in Islamic economics. He also contributed significantly in the context of the Islamic economic thought to understand what were the writings, the thought of the previous scholars on different aspects of Islamic economics. On banking and finance, his book, Riba-Free Banking, Risk-Sharing Models, Banking Without Interest, these are all key writings for us to organize our banking system along the Islamic principles. Another area that I can see his contribution will be on the ethics in economics. We know at the end of the day, no matter how strong the mathematical foundation of economics, ethics is the key thing. Failure of many crises is mainly due to the ethics, the breakdown of ethics. People are not, ethical in their dealing. So he brought the idea of its importance that ethics is incorporated within the economic system and how economic agents must incorporate ethics in their dealings. He also criticized the conventional economics, the various assumptions of the conventional economics, focusing on individualism, materialism, and he promoted the idea of holistic ethical approach grounded in Islamic principles of collective welfare and social justice, because Islam comes about to bring justice to the society. He talks about interdisciplinary approach, Islam and modern economics, bridging both the fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence, with the modern economic principles. He integrates that and proposes solutions. He talks about, as I mentioned earlier on, economic justice, the issue of poverty, the issue of inequality, the issue of exploitation, and how Islam can address those problems or those issues. Of course, we know he has been awarded and recognized, and one of the prizes is the King Faisal Prize, and many other prizes that he won because of his significant contribution. And I would say that his legacy remains a foundational area in the field of Islamic economics and finance. We learn a lot from him, and we want to continue to promote his vision of what an Islamic economic system would be that is rooted on the principles of justice, equality, and ethics. And this should be, uh, embraced by all, not only scholars, but also practitioners and policymakers. Let me go to the next stage by saying that the current Prime Minister, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, cited the late Professor Nejatullah Siddiqi in a couple of his speeches. Because what he has said is that Islamic banking has moved away from the spirit. I think we fulfill the Sharia principles, but I think in terms of the implementing Maqasid al-Sharia, it is a journey that we have to continue to implement. For example, when we see the development of Islamic economics, initially Islamic economics was the driver of the growth, was the driver, but unfortunately we see Islamic finance takes over. So a lot of research has been on Islamic finance and banking, less research on Islamic economics. I think now it's important for us to look at how we can develop Islamic economics and use it for policy making. And one example that we can see, the implementation of this idea of Maqasid al-Sharia, the importance of ethics, the importance of addressing poverty, alleviation, and financial inclusion, is the example used in Malaysia is the I-Tekad program. Although this was introduced way before Prime Minister Anwar became the Prime Minister, but this is expanded further under this current Prime Minister, where I-Tekad is a unit program. It's where commercial Islamic banks are involved in Islamic social finance, i.e. zakat and wakaf. An example of this is where zakat that is being paid by an Islamic bank is used for capacity building. Okay, and we call in this parlance what we call blended finance. So zakat is used for capacity building to train the micro entrepreneurs, and the commercial finance is to provide microfinancing to the poor entrepreneurs. So that's one example that is being used in Malaysia, and more funding is being given to this to expand throughout the whole country. The other example, which is quite novel now, is to use the zakat that is being paid by the bank, and this zakat fund is given as Qardul Hasan to micro entrepreneurs. So this Qardul Hasan financing is part what we call the productive finance. So the customers are the Asnaf category. They receive Qardul Hasan fund, and for this one should be used for financing purposes. In the event, say for example, they fail to pay because of legitimate reasons, then that fund need not be paid back by the customer. So that is considered as outright zakat. However, if they are successful in doing business, then they have to pay back that Qardul Hasan fund, and that Qardul Hasan fund will be recycled to be given to other micro entrepreneurs who are in the Asnaf category. So as we can see, the idea of Professor Nejatullah is now being expanded in Malaysia. But what we need to do next is to look at how the policy that can be developed further as inputs towards government policy. So every year when the government prepares budget, the national budget, we need to give input from Islamic perspective. So the issue is not just purely looking at banking or finance, but we need to look at the bigger picture. And that bigger picture is the Islamic economics. So how do we use Islamic economic principles to give input to the government in formulating economic policies for poverty alleviation, for financial inclusion, for trade, for supply chain, and so on. So these are important things that needs to be done. And I'm glad one of the key things that we discussed today and also recommended in this book is about creating young economists. We need to train young economists in the idea that bringing together traditional jurisprudence with economics, with Islamic economics, and how we can blend together, provide solutions to the government so that governments can implement this as part of their national economic development program. So I think this is very important for us to do that. So again, with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let me congratulate the team for coming out of this book, and I'm really glad that we are able to produce this book, and we hope that we can have conferences on this book to understand the issues further so that we can use it for policy development. So again, congratulations to the team, and with that, with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I launch this book. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
सबको लेके आई